Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandirno, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. The world is inevitably moving toward more decisions becoming leveraged with AI and more transactions taking place between the machines we use every day, smartphones, tablets, or connected TVs, and the machines representing someone. Joining me to discuss AI fairness is Greg Satell, author of Cascades and Mapping Innovation. Greg, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Happy to be here, Jill.
And Greg, many people assume that artificial intelligence and other technologies are inherently unbiased, but that is often not the case. So what are the sources of bias? Can you give us an example?
Yeah, just to be clear, that's never the case. I mean, people assume if something's in a system that it doesn't have those same human errors. But humans design systems, and there are a number of sources where bias comes in. First is bias in the data, or what data scientists call the learning corpus. So this is the data upon which the algorithms learn. Now, because this data is human generated, the human bias comes through. So a great example of this, and something that your viewers can try at home, is to Google professional haircut and unprofessional haircut. When you Google professional haircut and do an image search, pretty much all of the faces are white males. But when you do unprofessional haircut, all of a sudden you get gender and racial diversity. Why does that happen? Because those are the products of editorial decisions that Google is searching, those articles Google is searching. The second source of bias is algorithmic errors. So algorithmic design. Algorithms tend to be designed based on correlation, but correlation is not causality. For instance, you can very, very easily design an algorithm that correlates rising temperature readings on a thermometer with higher ice cream sales. But putting the thermometer next to a heater would not be an effective marketing practice. It won't affect the sales. Now, that's kind of a silly little example, but when you do things like correlate, let's say, zip codes to recidivism, to decide whether people get paroled or how long they go to jail for, it can be very, very serious. The last source, quite frankly, is just simple incompetence and bad algorithmic design. There's a lot of people who aren't very careful, and often people like to hear that an algorithm is, let's say, 98% accurate. But often that just means that it's been overfit to a particular set of data and doesn't work very well with real-world data.
So, Greg, how would you mitigate that bias?
You know, a lot of it is just transparency. Very much like we wouldn't let a human make decisions for us and not ask why those decisions are made. We want that same transparency in the algorithm. So we want to be able to have those algorithms be audited, know what data they're using, how the algorithm's designed. We have to get away from this idea that we can have black boxes making decisions for us. We wouldn't accept it for a human, and we shouldn't accept it from a machine.
How do you unlock value mitigating bias? Can this make organizations more profitable and competitive?
Absolutely. What you have to remember is a biased algorithm is a bad algorithm. It's not doing the job it should. If an algorithm is supposed to find talent for you, for instance, and it's biased against women or biased against certain racial groups, it's not finding the right talent for you. You know, a great example of how you can really unlock bias is Experian's Boost program. You've probably seen it advertised on TV. Here you're taking an area which has been used in the past to exclude people, especially people of color, from the credit markets, from being able to buy a house and build wealth. What Experian has done is, by unbiasing the algorithm and giving people access, they're not only allowing people to get credit who wouldn't before, they're also helping their banking clients find profitable customers, because banks and lenders, other types of lenders, they don't make money by not lending to people. They make money by lending to good credit risks.
Yeah, Boost is certainly a great program, definitely more inclusive. But Greg, one of the challenges with measuring and quantifying the success, let's say of ESG initiatives, for example, which is very in the mainstream right now, is standardizing the process, because what I might think is acceptable on the environmental side or the governance side might not be for someone else. So how do you plan to quantify AI fairness? Is there a way to standardize this?
So when we work with organizations on diversity inclusion transformations, we find that fairness is not the best benchmark. We want to look at performance. So if it's, for instance, fairness in recruiting, we want to say, okay, how are we getting the best talent, whatever that the gender or the race is. So when you look for the best performance, you end up being more diversity and inclusion. There's the one caveat to that is the understanding that this transformation is difficult to make, that we are all biased and our algorithms are inherently biased. So it's something that we want to guard against. But the ultimate goal, obviously, we want to be fair, but we want to improve performance, because we can never be a top performance if we're biased against things that can add value to us.
Right. I still think there's a lot of work to go as well. So let's say we have X% of African Americans in this country, and they only represent X% of corporate America. Obviously, there's a balancing act that needs to be done there, but is it feasibly possible to make it representative of everyone that makes up the US?
Right. We're never going to be fully representative. We want to be better, right? Better is always good. And I think especially we see with the millennials, businesses that are not diverse have trouble recruiting even from favored groups. So I think we have to get away from thinking of diversity and inclusion as, some sort of charity, and start looking at it as a performance issue. And there was a great example with the A levels that we put in Great Britain, that we put in the article, which was they came out with a algorithm because the kids couldn't take the test that was biased against kids in poorer schools. And because they were transparent, there was such a backlash against it, and they immediately were able to identify where they made a mistake and correct it. So I don't think when we talk about fairness, we talk about performance, I don't think we can have some objective metric. I think that we need to be open to the communities that we serve and have that dialogue and continue try to improve. We're never going to be perfect, but we can always be better.
Well, Greg, to end on a positive note, of course, what we've learned through COVID-19, that technology certainly helps to level the playing field and democratize access, because it opens up the opportunity for a larger workforce, not those in a specific geographic area. And of course, that's going to lead to more innovation and diverse thought of process as well. So, what we've learned utilizing technology, and of course, AI is a part of that, could really lead the way to building these more inclusive workforces.
Yeah, and we also have decades upon decades of research that show a more diverse workforce is a more innovative and better performing workforce.
All right, Greg, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandirno, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.